Welcome to the only place where real, raw, and vulnerable conversations happen with IFBB bikini pros to give you an inside look at their struggles, strategies, mindset, passions, and all of life beyond the stage. This podcast is made to inspire, motivate, and remind competitors and the average gym goer that even the most extreme lifestyles and elite athletes have their ups and downs. Thank you so much for tuning in today. I'm your host, Celeste Rains-Turk, and now it's time for the Confessions of a Bikini Pro podcast. Hello, everyone. Today we have the pleasure of connecting with posing coach and office assistant of Team Elite Physique, who works alongside Ada Bonilla, traveling to shows and helping competitors backstage. She studied sports management and spends most of her days at the Contest Prep Center doing online posing with athletes from all over the world. And she turned pro at NPC Nationals in 2019. Welcome to the show, Anya Nicholson. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. Like I said, I'm super excited and happy you're here and, just to be finally chatting with you. And you said you've listened to some, so I'm about to ask you, what is something you
Yes.
do or ritual you have right before your heel hits the stage?
So that's a tough one. Right before I go on stage, I usually pray that nothing goes wrong while I'm doing my presentation. And I usually call my mom when I'm backstage. So those are the two things that I do before my heel hits the stage.
Aw, is your mom nearby?
No, she's actually in Massachusetts, so that's where I'm from. She's from south of Boston, so we live on Cape Cod.
Oh, wow. And does your mom
Yeah.
just wish you good luck, or what do you guys normally talk about?
We usually talk about how I'm feeling, and that she hopes that I do well, and to stay confident and to not get nervous. Usually the normal mom things that, they would say to you over the phone.
Has she ever seen you compete?
She hasn't, but I think I'm going to do the Boston Pro this summer as one of my shows.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm fingers crossed she can come see me, so she'll be able to head up there. It's only an hour and a half away or so.
Oh, that would be super special.
Yeah, I'm really excited.
Oh, good. You could actually talk to her backstage and you wouldn't have to call her. It'd be super perfect.
Yeah, it would be.
Well, good. So I want to get right into this episode with a topic that I'm really passionate about, and I take it super seriously. And I know that you've had experience with this personally. So I'm going to preface this with, I remember when you went on Adam's podcast and Ashley's podcast,
Mm-hmm.
Bikini and the Brain, and you shared your story of battling an eating disorder in 2015, which kind of started from, and correct me if I'm wrong in any of this, and I'm going to definitely ask you to expand on it for sure, but it was from idolizing the skinny bodies of that time and starving yourself, then entering college with bulimia and throwing up every day after you ate, and eventually you found the fitness and physique industry, which showed you that girls can look amazing and eat. So how did
Mm-hmm.
you, well, actually, let me back up before I even ask you that. I'd like to know a little bit more perspective on what exactly you were going through at the time and how you ended up coming across the fitness and physique industry in general.
So around 2015, 2016, which was my freshman year in college, I had picked up bulimia as a way for me to stay thin, which was a really unhealthy option for me now that I can see that. And I got into the fitness industry through one of my friends that I found. Long story short, I had 2 breast augmentations, and I joined a website called JBL, which is Just Breast Implants. And I connected with this girl who had the same issue that I had. And she actually ended up being 3 hours away from me when I was down at school in Mississippi. She was in Montgomery, Alabama. And so her and I really connected over that. And then we also connected over the fact that we both had an eating disorder and kind of struggled with that through our recovery. So that's really where bulimia started for me, was when I had my first breast augmentation, as a way for me to stay thin because I was so nervous, I couldn't do anything. So I was afraid of gaining weight, and that was a way for me to control that. Her and I became really good friends, and I found out that she was a personal trainer. Her husband worked on an Air Force base, and that she was training clients on base. And I ended up meeting her, and we became best friends, which was really cool. And I had
Aw.
never been exposed to anyone in fitness before. So I was like, wow, there's, this really pretty girl, and she can work out, and she's had the same issues that I've had, and she's overcome them. So I started training with her, and that was my first introduction into fitness.
Wow, that's
So,
awesome.
yeah. And I ended up staying with her for 3 months over the summer. And over that period of time, she taught me how to track macros. She taught me how to lift weights and do my push pull split. And she also taught me how to take care of my body better and how to keep down food and improve on my mental aspect and relationship with food. So
Mhm.
she helped me a lot with that. And that was my introduction into fitness.
That's amazing. I love that you found someone who had overcome it and then was willing to help you to make peace with it too. I think that that's really positive because I know sometimes you can find people who have been through similar situations with you in anything in life, and yet neither of you maybe have a solution that you need or know what to do. And so when you find someone who does, and someone who's almost like the next level version of you, like the version of yourself you're trying to become,
Hmm.
it's really awesome when they are willing to take you under their wing and guide you. And you mentioned that she helped you with keeping down food. So I want the people listening to understand that it's hard when you're getting out of like the purge mentality to actually eat
Hmm.
again, right? So how did you ease into eating again, and what did you struggle with most when it came to getting out of that mentality?
So, what we did was we started my calories off where she thought my maintenance would be, and then we worked our way up from that. She spaced my meals out, so as soon as I didn't feel full, and it was very easy for me at the time to feel full. So my main goal was to really be in the moment, and she would always remind me, Anya, this is just right now. The way you're feeling, wanting to purge, wanting to get rid of that food is because you're not used to the feeling of being satiated and being full. And she was right. So it would take me like 30 minutes of wanting to feel like I wanted to purge in order to have that feeling go away and to feel satiated and to be able to go on throughout my day without wanting to do that. So really focusing on, okay, I just had a meal. What I'm not going to do is think about purging, right?
Mhm.
So instead of channeling that energy into, oh my God, the only thing I can think about right now is I want to get this food out of my system, to I need to think of this food as it's going to nourish my body, it's going to help me accomplish my goals, and it's going to help me build muscle. I remember thinking that so many times over in my head, if I want to build muscle, I need to eat. And she would always tell me that. And she was right.
I love
So,
that.
yeah.
That's so powerful. Was working with
Hmm.
a client, and she said one of the biggest shifts that we had made together was shifting the mindset from dieting and dieters mentality to nourishment and actually feeding your body, taking care of your body. And I think it's keywords like that, like the way we describe what
Hmm.
we do, the way we think about what we do, every perception we have plays such a massive role in the way we actually feel about what we're doing and the way that it actually works for
Right.
us.
Yes, that's so true. And the more we can preach that and get people to realize that food doesn't have to be this negative, bad thing, it changes our perspective on everything, whether it's food, fitness, our personal life, being able to go out and eat and do things that we want to do without being so focused on our intake. It just makes
Yes.
things so much easier.
Oh my gosh, I love this conversation already because it's just something I'm like feeling my stomach is getting butterflies because it's just something that I love. I love talking about it. I love thinking about it. And
Mhm.
something that's interesting is, especially in America, but we see this in a lot of more like first world countries, but they
Mhm.
we have this society that preaches like weight loss, an ideal look, and selling products that help you to lose weight or meet an ideal. Like there's so many influences from external sources, whether that's social media,
Mhm.
magazines, news, whatever. And so industries capitalize on this. So I'm going to talk specifically of the fitness industry, capitalize on this fear and on this desire for people to satisfy like society, and what society wants or needs or, desires from them, or what's the best
Mhm.
look. And what we know is that when we continuously push restriction, like you said, we have to take out that mentality. We have to do what we can to preach against it. But when we actually
Mhm.
follow that, and we have so many people in this world who do, and what happens is then it's going to increase their anxiety levels. It's going to increase their feelings of not being worthy. It's going to increase their feelings of everything I
Mhm.
do has to be revolved around food. And I can't actually enjoy dieting. I can't actually enjoy fitness. So it's conditioning, like literally the fitness industry is conditioning people to believe that in order to have the body that they love and one that they truly feel confident in and can move and, just feel good about, can only come from something negative, can only come from
Mhm.
feeling restricted, taking away going out to enjoy yourself, and being so hyper focused on food, when in reality, you and me both know that's not necessary,
Mhm.
and it's
I
actually
totally
not
agree with that.
beneficial. Yeah,
Mhm.
it's like the more we take away, like the more we tell ourselves we can't have food, the more we're just reinforcing this idea and this belief that that's the only way we can be happy with ourselves, and we're not successful unless we're taking away food. So people like competitors, let's say, when they get into that mentality of I've been taking away food and I've had a positive reinforcement of I've dropped weight, coach is happy, I'm looking good, I have new lines popping, then they
Mhm.
introduce like, okay, now we're going into more of an improvement season phase. They struggle with eating more. What have you noticed with some of the competitors you talk to or work with when it comes to taking away from, let's say, prep mindset and shifting more into the improvement season mindset, eating more, and really doing probably less cardio even?
I would say, well, the one thing I've noticed, which is like a repeat effect with different competitors, is they say that they have trouble eating that much. And they feel like they're forcing down food. They feel like they're not doing as much in terms of cardio. But like you said, switching that mindset from the positive reinforcement of losing weight and losing inches and seeing new lines to gaining muscle, feeding your body, replenishing, boosting your metabolism, giving calorie spikes, all of that is just as important as losing weight and leaning out and getting absolutely shredded for stage. So again, with the reinforcement of going from that shredded lean look and having the reinforcement of leaning out to gaining some of that weight back and bringing your calories up and boosting your metabolism is helping competitors see like it's okay to gain weight. You need to gain weight to make improvements. So in the office we always reinforce like you just did a fantastic job at your show, for example. Now we're going to take things back a couple of steps. We can make improvements. We can see your glutes grow, shoulders grow, back grow, whatever it may be for that competitor, and tell them, if you want to make progress, there are steps that you need to take to do that. And that includes, bringing down your cardio so your levels aren't as high and you don't adapt to, say, like 45 minutes of cardio. So bringing it down gradually and increasing your food over a period of time based on the progress that you see. So that's very important for competitors to understand is you're not always going to be in a deficit.
Yeah, I like that. I like the way you explain that too. And, a lot of girls, once they start entering in, I should say, let's say pulling out of a deficit, entering into an improvement
Hmm.
season, sometimes they get that urge, that desire to do a mini cut or immediately start
Yeah.
another prep. They get really uncomfortable with the weight gain. So, what have you guys done to
Hmm.
help talk competitors off of that ledge?
We usually have them take a week. So let me tell them, again, there are certain steps that you need to do to make progress. And it's really important that you stay true to that, because we want them to see progress just as much as they want to see progress. So when we hear, I don't feel so great this week, I'm bloated, it's too much food, I feel like I'm not doing enough, reinforce the fact that they're making progress. And a lot of times when competitors say this, they're seeing great improvements for what they're doing, whether it's their first week off of show, so they do a deload, or if it's the recomp. A lot of times they're doing just what they need to do and seeing the perfect progress, and they feel like they're not doing good.
Mm.
So we tell them, you're doing what you need to do, and I can promise you down the road it will get easier. You'll start enjoying the changes that you see, and when you lean out again, you'll be so proud of yourself when you get through this tunnel. There's always that lighthouse at the end of the tunnel, and if they can just get through this, they'll be that much prouder and happier for themselves for doing it.
Yes.
So
That is so true. Like,
yeah.
why would you? I wrote a post, by the time this episode comes out, it was a while ago, but it was like, why
Mhm.
would you wouldn't go up to a building that says under construction and then expect to come back, let's say when it says, oh, next reveal of this building is going to be, let's say January 2021, and then you see that building get revealed and it's the same thing. That wouldn't make any sense.
Mhm.
So when we go
Mhm.
under construction as competitors, yeah, there's going to be changes. It might get ugly, bricks falling everywhere, whatever it might be. But at the end of the day, you're going to pull off that cover and it's going to be this amazing next level physique that you hadn't previously had. And it wouldn't have been possible without going under construction. And I like that you said that you reinforce the progress mentality and that they're making progress the way they need to be doing it, because it tells them that, like, there's a reason for the process you guys are giving them as their coaches, and so that's
Mhm.
the only progress they need to worry about. When previously they were probably so used to just seeing, oh, a new line. Oh, I have like a striation, a vein. And then now those things aren't the progress that they're really looking for.
Mhm. Right. And it kind of goes along with you know, it, Rome isn't built in a day. It takes time. So just to build off of that, I always think of that
Yeah.
too, is it takes time to build a masterpiece of a body. I mean, muscle takes time to grow. So
Especially as a female, right?
yes, it's so difficult compared to guys. They can put on muscle so easy. I mean, of course, it still takes work, but for us, hormonally, it's so much more difficult. It takes so much more dedication, time, and work to
Yeah,
do that.
for sure. And I want to ask you again just about your history with the eating disorder. And Um, there's some beliefs that competing can exasperate or cause it or not necessarily help. However, I personally
Mhm.
believe that even though we can't deny that it has happened and can be true, and
Mhm.
competing can cause a lot of those things to rear their ugly head. But, I want to know from you on more of the personal side of things, how has bodybuilding actually helped you to overcome what was once, a really difficult reality for you? You did mention that you started tracking macros and training, but how did bodybuilding really help you to overcome it?
So I would say bodybuilding really helped me overcome my eating disorder, and especially when I started training with Adam, the way plans are set up. So I really love the fact that I had options within my meal plan to pick and choose what I wanted to eat. So I never felt restricted, even when I was like 1 or 2 weeks out from a show. I never felt like I couldn't live. I
Mhm.
know that's kind of like hard to say, but a lot of girls isolate themselves when they're in prep. I never felt like I had like the same intentions I did when I was bulimic, or the same relationship with food. Bodybuilding really improved my relationship with food when I realized that there are certain foods that I can eat that will benefit me, And I'm sure there are a lot of girls that can relate to this when I say there are foods that make you feel so much better physically and mentally than other foods like pizza or sushi or, things like that that kind of make you feel like sluggish and gross and compared to eating like chicken and rice or vegetables and stuff like that. You feel so much better and you have more energy. And I think when I realized that the food I was eating was really fueling my body and experiencing those changes compared to eating very carb heavy like I was when I was dealing with my eating disorder really helped me to grow and improve from that.
Mm. Yeah, that's an important takeaway, I think, for anyone listening and maybe struggling with that or that idea, even just transitioning into a healthier way of living or making choices, seeing it for how it makes your body feel. And also, like, I personally believe that there's not necessarily good or bad foods, but there are foods that are good
Mhm.
for us and there are foods that are not so great for us. And for some people,
Mhm.
they could do well eating like let's say a slice of pizza every day and it doesn't really phase them. Like they don't have
Mhm.
bloating, they don't have issues, they actually feel energized, like, okay. And then there's some people who like they can't have broccoli, they just can't do it. Or
Mhm.
there's certain types of veggies or foods, it's like allergies even, like there's certain things that just
Mhm.
don't do well for you.
Yeah.
So it's like we have to eliminate that, oh, this is good and this is bad because it's XYZ food. It's more just like, well, this isn't a great
Mhm.
food option for me. And the fact that you got to choose that, you said in your options for your plan and your prep, helped you to kind of, I'm assuming, learn more about your body as well.
Mhm. Yes, I learned so much about my body when it came to choosing foods. And when I reference like the foods like pizza or cake or things like that, those are things that don't work well with my body and
Yes.
my like digestion. So yes, figuring those things out, I learned so much, like what I can eat, what I don't digest well, and it really helped me feel more comfortable in my own skin.
Yeah, that's so important. And like when you love yourself, like genuinely love yourself, it's going to be easier to make empowered choices like that and more conscious choices where you know that, hey, putting, let's say, over 100 grams of sugar in my body every day is
Yes.
not healthy for me in the
Mhm.
long term. That's an easier decision to make because it's not coming from this fear of, oh, gaining fat and looking a certain way and blah 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 blah. It's not from that. It's from genuinely,
Mhm.
this is not going to serve me in the long term and I love myself enough to make a conscious decision for my body based on what I've learned about my body.
Right. I totally agree with that.
Yeah, it makes a huge difference when you can actually feel like good about yourself. And if you notice that, because foods definitely will impact your mood, foods definitely play a role in the way we feel and the way that we live. So, and like you said, even in the way we connect with others. So it's not the enemy, but it is something that, especially as athletes, we have to be on top of.
Mhm. Yes, definitely.
So when you started training, and you started training with your friend who you met through the group online, then you realized she was close by, and you were training with her, was that training for a competition or was that just training in general? And then you started competing with Adam?
So when I started training with Caitlin, I'll say her name.
Okay.
She probably wouldn't mind. um, the goal was simply to learn how to lift weights. So I had never done any weightlifting before meeting her. So we went through back and biceps, triceps, legs, glutes, hamstrings, quads. So I learned everything. Um, that way I could train on my own and work towards building muscle. So at that point, my goal wasn't to compete. I had never thought about it. And at the time, I still didn't really know about the world of competing. I knew about bodybuilding and building muscle, but I hadn't really done any research on my own about the bodybuilding as like an industry
Mm,
competition wise.
yeah.
So I hadn't learned about that yet.
And when did you learn about it and go, okay, yeah, this is something I want to do?
I think I learned about it when I was looking up different like body types. Like I would look up, say on like Pinterest or YouTube, women who weight lift or women that have muscle. And I realized, oh wow, there are different divisions for bodybuilding. And I kind of went through and I was like, huh, maybe I would like to do this. It would give me a goal and a healthy way to continue channeling positive energy and improve my body. And that's how I found out about bodybuilding and how I found my first trainer after Caitlin.
That's awesome. And do you ever feel like the eating disorder version of you, the past version of you, ever creeps back up and you have to do something about it? Or do you feel like that's something you have completely overcome?
I think that I think it's very difficult to overcome an eating disorder completely. So I'll still have thoughts sometimes. And that's, I haven't had any eating disorder oriented thoughts in a while, but it does creep up sometimes. And I just always remind myself of my goals, short term, what I want to do, and then long term. And really reining myself back in, like, and thinking, okay, if I give back into this, I'm backtracking to who I used to be, and I don't want to be that person anymore. I want to be the Anya that is healthy and lifts weights and does things to make herself feel comfortable in her own skin. And so the answer is yes, it does happen from time to time, but I always rein myself back in, and I haven't had any kind of relapse or anything like that since
That's
I saw
awesome.
Caitlin, and I feel really thankful for her, and I always think of her too whenever I
Yeah.
do things like that. And her and I still talk all the time. So yeah.
That's really awesome. I think it's important for people to know, like, if you are struggling with, even if it's not an eating disorder, but disordered eating or thoughts about food, constantly thinking about
Hmm.
food, struggling post show, whatever it might be. When girls go through my food relationship program, I always let them know, like, you may not feel like you've completely smashed it and overcome it and it'll never creep up again, right? Like, we can't make
Hmm.
promises like that, but it's about understanding the tools you need and the lessons you need and the action steps you need that are going to help you to address it should it come up again. And it sounds like you have
Hmm.
your go-to. Like, you think about your goals, you think about the person you want to be, you think about the person you were, you think about the people who helped you, and you know that you're in a better place now. And I think that because you have an exact thing you can go to, then moving through it becomes easier over time. And I think that's what most people need, is they need a system, they need strategy, they need something they can fall back
Hmm.
on or use. And having the healthy habits in place and the mindset in place that's actually going to help you to avoid relapsing like you were able to create, that's so important.
Hmm. Yes, I totally agree with that. Having the tools, working on your mindset, those two things will take you such a long way in terms of recovering from an eating disorder, and even taking time out of your day to really focus on them and even like regroup on what your tools are and creating new ones if you need them is really
Yes.
important. So, yes.
Oh my gosh, yeah, that's really well said. I totally agree. And come up with, well, you don't even have to come up with it. Hire someone, talk to someone, get help. Have a
Mhm.
consistent plan when you do it too. Like, all the girls in my food program, they have a whole journal and they have to do it every single day, multiple times a day, and it's just to increase awareness, these certain things within it.
Mhm.
And these rituals, these patterns, these journaling prompts, these thought processes, all these things are what actually help you to step into this next version of yourself who doesn't have those struggles or who doesn't have those thoughts. Like, we actually have to transform like the strong grooves in our brain that connect, let's say, food to enemy or food to purging or food to binging, whatever it might be. And we have to create a new groove to something else, a more positive connection, a better connection, and more importantly, a healthier relationship, one that we can sustain and feel good about.
Yes, I totally agree with that. I love that you have your girls keep a journal or a diary to do that. That way they can write it down and look
Yes.
back at it when they need to.
Exactly. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. It was something that I loved putting together. Was a lot of it was inspired by my own journey and how I overcame a lot of my issues with my relationship with food. but it was also from like going through psychology, and I spent my psychology degree, that is, and I spent so much of my time, I talked to Adam a little bit about this, but so much of my time just like
Mhm.
studying disordered eating and body image and negative self-affect and the way that people have overcome it in the past. And now I'm committing to like furthering my education, but it is powerful when you have mealtime rituals, when you have daily rituals, when you have things you can do that, even just increase your awareness about your relationship with food. You start to
Mhm.
come off of autopilot and you go into conscious choices. And that goes back to what you were saying, how, because you were able to start making those conscious choices, it's giving you that awareness of what actually makes you feel good. And then that also allows you to see that you feel better as this version of you. And that's the same thing.
Mhm.
We can see the benefit to choosing a new pattern versus an old one.
Yes, that's so true. I totally agree with that. And again, with the journaling, if you're a visual person, that's such a good avenue for you to take. Even if it's just on your phone or having like an actual journal, is so good for you to be able to look at and visualize, okay, what am I doing today? What do I need to do tomorrow to improve? And then taking that and making it real instead of, writing it down saying you'll do one thing, taking that and actually moving it into your daily life, making it an active approach to bettering yourself.
Yes, exactly. It's the difference between like, oh, I'm thinking about it or I'm contemplating it to
Hmm.
actually doing it. Do you have a journaling
Hmm.
practice?
I don't, but I keep a log on my phone
Yeah.
whenever I have. That's why I brought up keeping like a notes in your phone, and I do this all the time. I write down every day like how I'm feeling, what I can do to feel better tomorrow, what I need to do today to improve in order to feel better tomorrow.
I
So
love that. Oh my gosh, that is so awesome. I love that you do
yeah,
that.
and it helps a lot.
Yeah, how long ago did you start that and how has it made a difference?
I started it when I began my recomp with Adam. So that's when I had like the worst kind of like cycling mentality of, oh, I don't want to eat this much. I'm eating too much. I'm not going to see progress. And I was like, how can I channel this energy into something positive? So I started writing down a paragraph or two every day, and it'd be, how do I feel? How do I want to feel? And what do I need to do to get there? And do that every day or at least 3 or 4 times a week whenever I do have that mentality kind of pop back up to rein myself back in.
That's
So,
that's
yeah.
super powerful. I'm writing it down because I want everyone to be able to do the same. So that was, how do I feel? How do I want to feel? And what do I need to do to feel that way?
Yes.
Okay, that's awesome. I hope that our listeners write that down and use it and see how it makes an impact in their life too. I think having that self-awareness and having a practice that, you're able to check in with yourself, it takes you out of that like
Hmm.
craziness mentality of I'm just going to do what I'm told and da da da, and more into like, okay, well, what do I actually need and how do I want to feel? So, what did you find was coming up for you a lot? Like, give us an example of maybe how you felt, how you wanted to feel, and then what you did to get there.
So, for example, I'll give 2 examples. So when I
Okay.
was recomping and versus when I was in prep. So when I was recomping, an example of how I felt was really full, bloated, and not being happy with the way I looked in the mirror. How did I want to feel? Um, Less bloated. I wanted to look at myself in the mirror and feel confident. And when it comes to making improvements, so backtracking, how I wanted to feel, improving and using that energy in the gym, and then actions to improve that were doing my cardio. Sometimes I would skip cardio because I would just be so down on myself about, how many calories I was taking in or, you know, feeling bloated and not wanting to go to the gym and saying, okay, what am I going to do? I'm going to go to the gym and get my cardio done. I'm going to be okay and work on feeling okay when I'm bloated and knowing that it's just for that chunk of time after I ate that I'm going to be bloated and not feel so great. And then using that energy and focusing on the fact that I was recomping and in a caloric surplus and using that energy to build muscle. So it is, of course, possible to gain muscle when you're in a deficit, but, using that, being like, okay, this is a primal time for me to make improvements. So that's for recomping.
Love
And then
it.
for leaning out, I'm sorry?
I said I loved it.
Oh, oh, sorry, it broke up for a minute.
That's okay.
And then for leaning out, feeling tired, not feeling like I'm where I should be. And then, so that's how I was feeling. How I wanted to feel was on track and more awake, and actions to kind of move myself into a better mindset and feeling better is knowing that I am where I need to be. And if I am behind, I'm going to get there and do what I have to do to get there by following my plan, following my diet and cardio. And when it comes to feeling tired, understanding that, that you're going to have days when you're in a caloric deficit that you're going to feel tired, you're going to feel sluggish. So maybe, I would take time for myself that weekend, a couple of hours, and just watch Netflix and hang out after I got my workout and cardio done. So
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing those examples. I think that's great perspective and going to be super relatable. I think pretty much any of us can relate to that, all of those feelings. And you did mention that, in knowing that you were in a recomp phase and there was going to be benefits to that. We talked a little about this before too. I want to know, in your experience, what you did to improve your body composition, your metabolism, and your shape that you feel has been most beneficial for you?
I think the most beneficial thing that I did while I was recomping, and this is something that I didn't understand before I had a coach like Adam, was that you need to do repeat exercises. So time under tension, high volume, is really important when it comes to building muscle and changing your body composition. And then also bringing your cardio down to a point where you can use it when you need it. So those two things really played a role. And lifting heavy, going through and picking the most efficient exercises for your body, and communication with your coach, whether it be, hey, when I lift, say I'm doing glute bridges and my lower back kicks in, or I can feel my quads. Touching base with your coach is so important when it comes to the recomp process. That way they can pick out exercises and make sure they have you on the most efficient plan.
I love that. Were there any exercises you're like, yeah, I'm not feeling this in the way that I expected or I'm supposed to be?
Definitely. One thing, I think a lot of people listening who are in the bikini division or compete as athletes would be curtsy lunges.
Yes.
And I feel that in my quads. I don't feel it in my glutes, and it sucks because there's so many girls that feel it in their glutes, and I'm like, I can't do it. I don't feel it. So
you
yeah,
can't
that was
train with
one thing
Ashley
that I had.
K.
Do what?
You can't train with Ashley K then, because that's like her favorite, isn't it?
No. I know. I was so bummed when I couldn't do them because I was like, oh man, she is the best glutes and I can't do this exercise. Gosh.
So what helps you to feel your glutes the most?
Hyperextension, for sure,
Okay.
over any exercise. What about you when it comes to building muscle? I guess pertaining to glutes, since you stuck with the glute exercises.
Definitely hip thrust. I feel like crazy in my glutes. And I also with I like deadlifts. I like them in any foot position. I love it. I
Mm-hmm.
just feel it so much in my glutes, my hamstrings. In my improvement season, this past improvement season, like when I did lying hamstring curls, I really squeezed my, well, you're supposed to do this, but I really focused on it because I hadn't been doing it before. I squeezed my
Mm-hmm.
glutes like I was thrusting into the actual machine, like the pad, and then I would curl, and I just felt like a whole different engagement. So that was really good. But curtsy lunges, I do feel in my glutes. I'm gonna tell you straight up. I do feel those in my glutes.
Dang, girl, you're so lucky. But I
Yeah.
totally agree with you on hip thrusts for sure. And then what was
Yeah.
the last exercise that you mentioned?
Um, what the heck? What was it? I said Romanian deadlifts, and then the lying hamstring curl, squeezing your glutes into it.
Yes, I wanted to touch on this. Adam told me about squeezing your glutes when you do hamstring curls. It
Mm-hmm.
changes the game. The laying hamstring curls, that is.
Yes. Yep.
I never knew to do that, and it's awesome for activation.
Right? It's like I could see my hamstring glute tie-in getting better as I was doing it.
Yeah, isn't it crazy?
It
There's just
is.
little things you can change like that completely change an exercise and make it that much better.
Right? Like just by being
Yeah.
more conscious of the movement and
Mhm.
then like choosing to squeeze it and knowing that you can do things like unconventionally. Like you go into any gym and you see someone do lying hamstring curl, they're just like squeezing their hamstring, their hips are coming off the bench, like all that stuff is happening.
Mhm.
But like then when you do it mindfully and you actually like don't allow space, it I mean,
Mhm.
I had to drop the weight so much and I knew that okay, now I'm really using the right muscles, and I think that
Mhm.
was part of why I can now like engage my I well when I'm posing I feel like I can get like a better feel now too um
Mhm.
when I'm hitting my back pose, and also it helped a lot with like any other movement, just being super conscious like, well, how do I actually squeeze from the right place?
Yes, I totally agree with you on that. I actually have done the same thing. It makes you more conscious. I sometimes do that as like my warm up exercise. That way I can make sure I'm
Oh.
engaging. And yeah, it really helps.
That's a good idea. I like band work too. Like I know some people like are like, "Oh, you don't need to do band work." I like band work a lot.
Yes,
Um
bands are awesome. There's so many exercises you can incorporate them.
yeah, exactly. They're underrated too. They've been like ruined by the swipe videos on IG that people are like, "This is not gonna help you grow your glutes." I'm like, "Yes, it is." Like this girl has
Yes.
glutes and she's using bands. Like let her be because it's working. Anyway.
Yes, bands are awesome.
They are. So, you did contribute a lot of your success, not just to, the improvements in your physique, but like we just talked a little bit about posing. So, I want to actually talk to you about posing because you became a posing coach. You've been doing that with TEP. So, what inspired you to even become a posing coach?
I would definitely say over the course of like my recomp and my prep, I would watch every single video on NBC News online on YouTube that I could find of shows. And I would just watch and analyze and see who was winning. And posing was something that I was very insecure with when I started getting into bodybuilding. I picked up with a posing coach and I would pose like 2 or 3 times a week for 5 or 6 months. That was up until I moved out to Colorado. So and having a posing coach, she was so inspiring to me. And I wanted to be able to deliver that kind of inspiration and instruction to competitors and tell them about like the things that I had learned and what um, I had noticed from show to show. And that's when I realized I think I would really love to be a posing coach
Mm.
because I love watching shows. I love analyzing and breaking down and rewatching and seeing what competitors are doing to win, what the judges are favoring, and really honing in on that. And I just fell in love with posing. It's an art form. And I think part of it stems from the fact that I used to dance when I was younger and I cheerleaded in high school.
Mm.
So I think part of it came from that too.
Like
So
you are
yeah, I
like you
love
have
it.
that skill of like looking at something and going like that looks good. This is like you can put together routines, things like that. Like you already had that skill from those sports.
Yes, yeah. Thankfully, I think if I hadn't had that background, I don't think I would be pursuing this avenue as a posing coach. So yeah, and I think, another part is when you get on stage, you can be whoever you want to be. You can be really sexy, you can be poised, you can be elegant. There are different competitors you see on stage and you see their different style and the variance between them. and you realize, wow, it's almost like you're acting, right? So you can
Mm.
be this really shy, insecure, not so confident with taking steps or being flowy with your arms, and take that and channel it into who you want to be, who you are as a person. And I think not only does posing transform who you are as a competitor, but it also overlaps into your own life. So you hold yourself differently. You're more confident.
Wow, I actually never thought of it like that, but you're so right. Like, I think
I know
about,
it's a different way of thinking about it.
yeah, like whenever I finish a posing session, I always carry myself differently after. Like, I'm walking out
Hmm.
of there like I'm gonna be the next, front lead when the Pussycat Dolls go back on tour. I'm like ready
Yes,
to
I
go.
love that.
Although I don't think I even pose like that, but I definitely like think about that stuff. Like just a like I like to
Hmm.
think about the things where it's like, can you step to that energy of like someone who's very confident, but like when you're already a confident person and you step on stage or you step into a routine, it's pretty awesome because it allows you to showcase that or have fun with it. And you said you
Hmm.
analyze a lot of competitors, and you of course there's some with very different styles, and we see a lot of the pros play around with that. And not as much in the MC, but there's definitely different styles. So, what are some trends you've noticed recently, and how have you implemented them with your clients or your athletes?
So one thing, and which is probably the biggest change that I've noticed from the national level and the pro level, is that a lot of the girls in bikini are showing their lats more in their front pose and in their back pose. So changing your arm placement, so the resting arm, the arm that's not on your hip,
Mhm.
to where you're flaring that lat in your front pose is a big one. And then in the back pose, and this is something that I've just noticed really at the national level, and sometimes with different competitors, I think it varies based on their personality on stage, is opening up that elbow angle a little bit more.
Oh,
And
okay.
then in addition to that, the front pose has evolved from the traditional front pose to more of the side front pose, right? That
Mhm.
you see almost every competitor doing. And also in the back pose, pushing a little bit harder in the glutes to where you get that definition, right? That the judges are looking for, but not necessarily that striated definition. So posing wise, I've been able to implement this with many of my clients by having them make some small tweaks. Some of them are already doing it when they come in, and others, will regroup and have them um, make a completely different routine. So we'll go through and analyze their front pose and their transitions. And another thing that I want to touch on is um, in the transition pose, we've also seen that change, and that's that the competitors are showing the smallest part of their waist when they transition out of that front pose, so they're really twisted.
Mm.
Um, and that's another thing that I've really worked on. And in addition to that is the vacuuming during posing.
Okay, so you do it while you're posing?
Yes, yep, really controlling that waistline.
Yeah, I mean, I know a lot of girls practice it. I practice it myself,
Hmm.
vacuuming. When I've done it, I've checked in and I've been like trying to vacuum during it, and I'm like, this is interesting. I feel like practicing it standing up and practicing it from the posing positions will definitely help me.
Hmm.
How have you made it so it
Yeah,
doesn't look like you're, because some people do the vacuum and they look like so crazy, but how do you do it so you're just controlling it just enough to where it looks good and flows with your physique?
I think practice. So practicing on your own the vacuum. So like after a workout or after you do cardio, implementing that into posing, really like holding that abdominal control and controlling your rib cage. So holding that in as well while taking like smaller breaths is how I tell competitors to vacuum while they're posing. And it really gives you that edge on stage. To like list a few, I think Ashley does it on stage, Hannah ran friends. You can tell if you put competitors side by side who's doing it and who isn't. And it really brings in your waistline. So yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm like soaking all of this stuff in, and my mind's going a few different directions that I want to take this conversation. So, you
Sure.
mentioned the difference in the front pose and the evolution of the front pose from the side, more like side glute, and then you've got the S pose or like the really traditional one. So,
Mhm.
have you noticed, or what's your opinion on posing differently in comparisons than the girls around you? Like, let's say you're hitting the S pose, but everyone else is hitting that, now more standard front pose.
I think it depends from physique to physique. If you're hitting that S pose versus the pose everyone's doing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, if you can work it very well to the point where you can make your waist look very small and you have great glutes and you don't have that quad shelving, I
Yes.
think that you can work that to your advantage. And also, some girls have trouble with abdominal control in that side front pose, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is the pose that everyone's doing. So really working with individual competitors and having them form routines that work for their physique is what's going to help them excel. Because I feel like that's what the judges are looking for on stage, is not seeing everyone looking like, a clone of each other in the same pose, right? Seeing like
Mm.
what looks best on each competitor, even showing the judges, okay, this is what I look like in the S pose, this is what I look like in the pose everyone else is doing, and letting them see that and see how good you look in that pose. So going through and breaking down why a competitor looks good in that pose, why a competitor doesn't look good in the other pose, and kind of analyzing their physique, whether they have fuller glutes or more abdominal control, less abdominal control, fuller quads, breaking that down and seeing like what they look best doing, and then what they're comfortable with transitioning with their transitions. So I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it
Kind of hard to
does.
describe unless you have like a competitor in front of you and you're breaking them down and going through it with them.
Totally. You're doing a good job of like drawing the picture for sure, because I'm definitely a visual person. So the more you're like using those depictions, I'm like, okay, yeah, I'm getting it.
Hmm.
So, okay, so like there's not this belief in your mind that, okay, the judges want to compare you all the same, or is it kind of, hold on, let me backtrack on how I'm rephrasing this. So like there's no way in prejudging you're going to know during comparison round that every single girl next to you is hitting an S pose and you're hitting the new standard front pose, or vice versa. Um so you're suggesting that have a few in your arsenal that look really good on you and show them that.
Hmm. Yes,
Okay.
I think that that's best. What's worked for me may not work for another competitor. I do what every other girl on stage does, which is hitting that side glute pose.
Mhm.
Um, so sometimes blending in with the pack is a good thing, but if you have attributes to your physique that you can show better in a different pose, I think that you should do that.
Yes, I at one of my shows, my coach backstage after prejudging was like, "Okay, at finals, like when you turn around, like in comparisons, they were like, only hit your second front pose. Don't hit your side glute one just for this. Like just hit your second one." And I was like,
Hmm.
okay, I'll do that. And I did it, and it actually paid off for me. I was really the only person who was doing it in that, when you turn back around from the curtains and then before you walk back.
Hmm.
And I noticed it did make a difference. My waist looked way smaller in all the pictures than the other girls, and I ended up getting first in that was a novice class. And I was
Hmm.
like, I hadn't thought about that. Now, was that the only reason? No, because I still had the other pose in my arsenal, and I used that right in front of the judges
Hmm.
and in my own routine. So I think it's like having that awareness, and then also being able to
Hmm.
talk to your coach and your posing coach and be like, on that day, like what looks good. Like my coaches have been like, don't hit this pose anymore. Like this is the one that looks best. Or if you hit it, hold this one longer. What's your opinion on
Hmm.
like the day of changing things up?
I have never done that honestly. I'm posing with someone before a show, we make sure we have all of that information picked out and decided on before they get on stage. Because the last thing I would want to do as a coach is send someone on stage having changed things and not being sure of their physique. Or, say you're hitting a front pose and then you switch to the other side. So
Oh
you're
my God,
back
I could
facing,
never
like,
do
okay,
that.
I know. I like it's mind blowing to me. I actually tried that at one of my shows and it didn't go very well. So I would never put another competitor through that
I
mentally.
know. Yeah, that's rough.
I would say go through with your coach, touch base with them, figure out what works best for you, know what is being done at shows that looks good, and go with that. And know who's judging the shows too, because usually they have a preference on posing. And explaining that to your competitors is also really important. So,
What'd
yeah.
you notice at USA's versus let's say NPC nationals? What'd you notice in terms of judging preference?
In terms of judging preference, I noticed from USA's and nationals is that the girls are opening up their arms and their back pose a little bit more. And I also noticed that the girls took more time with their individual routines. I don't think they walked the girls at NPC nationals, but I think they did at USA's. So that was another thing. And then in the front pose, creating that space between your heels. So in the front pose, some of the girls place their feet closer together. And I noticed that NPC nationals, they have more space from their resting leg to their standing leg. So that was another thing. And then one thing that I noticed is that there are girls that had very deep V's with their tie-ins and very prominent hamstrings. And all the girls in the first call-outs, and this is a trend, between USA's and nationals, is that they're looking for a little bit more softness. It's not so hard anymore.
Oh, that's good to know. So you saw those
Mm-hmm.
physiques being rewarded, the ones who were flaring their lat more, the ones who were having more space in their between their heels, and the ones who had softer lines in the back pose.
Yes.
That's
Yeah.
cool. That's good to know. So, what did you like? You had been analyzing and being a posing coach yourself. You knew in your own journey to earning your pro card that your posing was going to make a big difference. So, did you change
Mm-hmm.
anything about your routine, or did you change anything about your look that you felt really allowed you to nail it at nationals?
I did. I changed my individual routine, so I added in a couple of things to spice up, my transitions, and then really nailing my angles was important. Another big thing, which is really obvious if you look at my Instagram page, is I changed my hair.
Yes, I
The one
noticed
thing
that.
yeah, it was one thing I had never thought of doing, I never wanted to do, but I came to a point where I realized, the girls that first call outs at the Olympia in majority of the classes at the national shows this year were brunette. There were a few girls that were blonde, but majority of them did have dark hair. So I figured, okay, the judges are, you know, they prefer the ladies with darker hair because it creates a contrast between your suit, your tan, and your overall look. So that's one thing that I definitely changed was my hair, and then I switched my suit color because I changed my hair, and then I just neatened up my routine a little bit.
And what was your feedback from that show?
I'm actually still waiting on feedback.
No.
I haven't heard back. I know it's been so long, but I'm hoping in the next couple weeks to hear back from Tyler and Sandy on the changes that I made and what I need to improve on before I make my pro debut.
Totally. So, do you have any posing pet peeves?
Posing pet peeves. One of the biggest pet peeves I would say um, is when ladies are in their back pose and they pinch their elbows almost to where there's no space between their waistline and their elbow. So there's no
Mhm.
triangle. Like if you look at a competitor and she has some space between her elbow and waistline, there's going to be like a sideways triangle kind of shape through there. If you can't see that, it hides your upper glute definition. So that's one thing. And there have been a couple of girls that I've seen on stage. I'm like, gosh, if she just opened up her elbows a little bit, you would be able to see that upper glute roundness better. So that's definitely a pet peeve of mine.
Yeah, I could see you in the audience being like, oh my gosh, these girls need my help. Yeah, I definitely I think if I were to be a posing coach, I would have to restrain myself. I'd be like, I can't watch some. But at the same time,
Mm-hmm.
that's not exactly my passion. I think posing is awesome and fun, and I love seeing it. I like
Mm-hmm.
posing with girls. I think it's awesome. But I leave it to the professionals like you. So you mentioned earlier you noticed there was a little bit more spacing. People were bringing their elbows out a little wider. Did you
Mm-hmm.
feel that was helping them or hurting them? So maybe not like, okay, obviously you don't like the pinching the back and there's no space, but then there's like the medium amount, and then there's the little bit more elbow flare. Did you notice you liked that, or they didn't take to it?
I think that there's a clear line between just like, I think there's a good amount of flare that you can add in your back pose when it comes to your elbows, but then there's a line of being too far out. So with the bringing your elbows out a little bit more, it allows the judges to see your rear delts more, and then it also creates more within your back. So it creates a smaller waist, but kind of passing that where your elbows are out completely, I think it takes away from your physique. So there's definitely a line between it being just right and too much. And
Not like chicken dance, but not.
yeah.
I got you. So,
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking of something, and now I've forgotten it, but I do want to transition a little bit to, you mentioned earlier it really is based on the girl's physique, and that's going to be how you
Mm-hmm.
determine the best routine, the best poses for them. So
Mm-hmm.
when you're working with these girls, have you noticed maybe some consistency in terms of body type or athlete shape that has made a difference in how you approach routines, where you can look at someone and go, oh, they have a similar body type to this person and we know this looked good, so let's try it on them? Or is it super individual in a different way?
I think it is individual, but I definitely do have competitors where I'm like, oh wow, they remind me of this girl that I've coached, or they remind me of this pro. And then I go back and look at their posing and say, okay, this looks really good on them. Why don't we try it and see if it works? And a lot of times it has worked to their advantage, and it does look good on their physique. So it worked to that level. And then if, it's a competitor where they're, either an ectomorph or an endomorph or a mesomorph, we go through and we analyze like, okay, so this is your body type and you're leaning out for stage or you're recomping right now, right? We're going to go through and give you the baseline to know how to pose. And then as you begin to reveal your physique, go through and say, okay, these are the changes that we can make. You've made really good progress, but because, your shoulders have come down, I want you to move your hand higher up on your waist, right? So say if they lost some size on their shoulders, if that's ever a scenario, not the
No,
resting arm.
God
There
forbid.
are, I know, right? You'd have them move it up a little higher.
Okay.
Or, if they have too much shoulder, in that case, they move their hand a little bit lower along their waist. Um, so it really varies from competitor to competitor. It's easy to tell where someone sits in terms of adjustments being made to their routine when they've started the lean out process. That way we can really see how they're coming in.
Definitely. Yeah, that makes sense. I know
Mm-hmm.
I have a routine that I love now and I use it, and I rarely make, major changes to
Mm-hmm.
it. But when I get closer to showtime, I'm like, I get with my posing coach and I'm like, let's do this. Like, let's just make sure, she looks it over, gives me the go ahead, or like makes small tweaks. Like
Mm-hmm.
she'll tweak a little bit of my like foot position or a little bit of my hand position, just like you said. And I feel like it's
Mm-hmm.
good to have a second pair of eyes. And I'm curious, do you offer posing for people who aren't on Team Elite Physique, or is it just for athletes of Team Elite Physique?
I do. So if there's anyone, it doesn't matter what gym they come from, I welcome them to come in and pose. I love posing people. It doesn't matter if you're part of the team, you're always welcome to come in and schedule an appointment to pose. So yeah,
That's
no, it's not
awesome.
just limited to Team Elite Physique members.
Cool. Okay. So just in case because we've talked a lot extensively about it, I'm like, oh, I kind of want people to be able to reach out to you about it. Um,
Yeah.
so that's awesome. And you obviously, you and Adam have Cody, your Labradoodle, who works in the office
Yes.
too. I just started following him on Instagram. So
Oh, I saw that.
yeah, he's so cute. And when he gives you guys hugs, I'm just like, I need that. I need that. That's so sweet. So does he
He's
pose with
such
you
a good
guys?
boy. Sometimes on team lift days, he'll come in with Adam and I. We try to bring him to every team lift because people love to see him, and he loves seeing the people. I think he loves seeing the people more than the people love seeing him, but that's totally okay.
That's so
So yeah, a
cute.
lot of times it's really funny. He has his own chair in the prep center,
Oh my
and
god.
he'll just hang out there and greet people when they come in. Or if we're posing, usually it's Adam. He loves Adam, probably a little more than he loves me, but that's okay because it's his dad. He'll hop up on the posing bench and sit and watch the girls. It's really funny,
Oh
but
my
he's
god.
very good that way.
That is so
And
sweet.
yeah, he's such a good boy. He's sitting right next to me right now.
He's like, you talking about me? Oh, well, when did you guys get him?
So I actually got him in August of last year,
Uh-huh.
and I had him with me when I moved out here. So he's been really nice to have, and you know, he's happy he has a dad now.
I was gonna say he betrayed his love for you, for Adam. You were his
A little
mama.
bit. I know it.
That's awesome.
I think, yeah, Adam is just so good to him. I think that's why he loves him. I'm very good to him too, I'm not gonna lie. But I think it's because he hasn't been around too many males that he really loves Adam, and he's a different personality to really cling to. And it's probably like when he doesn't go into the prep center, he really misses him. So he's always very excited when he comes home at the end of the day. Yeah.
That's awesome. He's like, I can smell the testosterone. Give me some of that. That's what I need.
Yeah.
Okay, so we got Cody, aka Dudes, aka assistant, and he's sometimes there, so that's like more motivation to go to the contest prep center. But I'm gonna try to stop in April.
Hmm.
So I'm super excited about that. I'm gonna have to meet him. I
Yes,
hope he's
he would love
there.
to. Yes, I will. If you let me know when you're coming in, I will make sure he's there.
Awesome. Okay, I
And
will.
yes. By the way, on the topic of the prep center and dudes, um, I'm not sure if you heard that Adam bought a piece of property and he's
Yes.
looking at constructing a new prep center, and he wanted me to let you know that he would love to build you an office.
Oh my god. Yes, I absolutely would love that. That makes me so happy. I'm smiling. You could probably tell. Yeah, no, I seriously, that would be amazing because the work I want to do and the work that I am doing, if I can,
Hmm.
bring it to more competitors, that's what really matters to me. So that's amazing to hear. And we could do more
Yeah.
podcast episodes. We can do so much. It's gonna be great.
Yes, that would be awesome.
I can't wait to see it too. So, okay, I'm gonna actually bring up Adam now because I posted on my story asking people to submit questions for you. And you could probably
Okay.
guess, girls want to know deets on you and Adam. So one of the questions was if you've, and this is a question I think people wonder, but maybe get scared to ask. And I was like, I'm going to ask it,
Hmm.
even though I'm a little scared to ask. I'm just going to ask it. So it was, do you ever get jealous dating a coach who is constantly in touch with women, specifically women like, sending their pictures of their body and who are like beautiful and athletes and all this stuff?
Honestly, no. When and I learned this very quickly when I started working in the office and understanding the line of work that he does, is that he sees so many competitors and he's very professional. It never bothered me, and it still has never bothered me. Um, you see someone's physique and you assess it as a body and what they need to improve on or what they're doing great with. And, it's never been a concern of mine. So, yeah.
So no.
I
Yeah,
never
no,
really thought about it that way.
I could see that. Like it's more of a just like the body is the experiment, it's something you're changing. And especially with the way Adam approaches it, it's very analytical, metrics, things like that.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
yeah, I could see that. And now have you ever struggled between being a girlfriend, being a client, and a coach with this company? Like, do you ever struggle with drawing the line or having those boundaries between like those identities?
I think we definitely struggled, and I'll be honest with this, when we first started dating, between our personal life and our professional life. Um, so really like setting goals personally and professionally that we wanted to achieve together. And saying like, okay, when we're at work. And when we come home, that's like our time together, right?
Mm-hmm.
So at work, it's professional. At home, it's personal. And being able to define those two things really helped us grow in our relationship and realize weak points and work on them. So,
That's
yeah.
powerful.
Sometimes, yeah, it's definitely helped creating like boundaries in our relationship. And it's also, I think, helped us learn more about each other. So,
Yeah. And do you ever find like when you're, because as his client too, do you ever find that there's maybe more pressure on you, or have you ever felt like there was more pressure?
I have, but I've always done my best to make myself proud before I make anybody else proud. So really remembering that I'm doing this for me and staying true to me. I know I'm going to have the same result as if I put the pressure on myself to, for example, want to appease people that are going to see me on stage and know I'm dating Adam, right?
Mm-hmm.
So setting like the, hmm, I don't know how I want to word this. Um, hmm. I'll just leave it at that. I don't know what else to say. I lost my place of what I was saying.
All good. Though it was actually pretty clear. Like you step on stage for you and you make sure that you're making yourself proud before anyone else. And even though people know like when you step on stage, like, yes, you're Adam's girlfriend, there's still that level of, but this is my thing. Like this is what I'm doing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
So, okay. So then Um, let me see. I had it written down. I wanted to ask you. So you and Adam talked about how you can keep personal life one way, professional life another way. Was there any times
Hmm.
where you guys struggle with actually enforcing those things?
I think sometimes, well, like when I was first learning, I would get confused on things. And that was really the only time that we struggled. We move at like a very fast pace in the office, and it was hard for me at first to catch up to that pace. So I was a little slower, and I think from time to time he'd get a little frustrated with me, and that's totally understandable. But that was really the only time that we struggled with that.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I could see how like sometimes my boyfriend will give me feedback on like a lift I'm doing because he's into powerlifting and he's so good at it.
Hmm.
Like that's his strength. And so when I like get sumo deadlifts on my plan, I'm like so excited. I'm like, yes, I get to do this. And then he'll watch me and he'll like make tweaks and he'll help me. But sometimes I'm like, I can't listen
Hmm.
to the feedback in such high doses. And that was a lot like in the beginning of our relationship, like he was like helping me with the three major movements, and then it was like
Hmm.
okay, like then it was less and less, and at first I had to explain to him like sometimes the way you coach me doesn't feel good. So I always wonder when I talk to girls on here who have their boyfriend as their coach, like how they deal with that. And I think over time what I learned with my boyfriend, he's not my coach but he's helped me in the gym, it's just like communication, like what do you need from
Hmm.
them, like it's okay to tell them what you need and it's probably most important. um
Hmm.
so it sounds like you guys have been able to find that balance, and even when you were struggling to get brought up to speed, it ended up working out.
Yes, for sure. Communication is definitely a big thing, and that's where we've failed in the past. is communicating about things. So working on that has been really important for us. Yeah,
Do you
and
ever
I'm
feel
glad that you can relate to that, so I'm not alone.
you're not alone? No, and there's other people who've come on here who are like dating their coach, and they've broken it down similarly to you, where it was like boundaries and communication. Some of them said, you
Mhm.
know, he sees me every day, so the adjustments are different, which I was curious about with you. Like, do you still check in like a normal client? Because we've had some people who say, I do check-ins like everybody else, and some people say no, because he sees me every day.
When I'm recomping or when I'm doing my post show, he sees me every day and I kind of let him know how I'm feeling, where my weight is at, where my measurements are at. The only time I really checked in um, is when I was between 8 and 6 weeks out from a show. So if I'm like prepping and I have a goal to reach and I'm really trying to stay accountable, and I think it's more for me than for him, is staying accountable by checking in. Um, yeah, then I'll check in. And when I have like a really important goal to meet, like nationals, I made sure I checked in every single week at the same time, on the same day. So yeah.
That's awesome. And you said something, and I was like, oh, that got me thinking. And now it's like it's actually totally left me. But if it comes
Oh
to me,
no.
I'm gonna ask you. I'm kind of upset because it was actually a good question.
Oh
Um,
no.
no, it's okay though, because it was something you were saying about 6 to 8 weeks out. Oh yeah, it wasn't even about that. It was just like you mentioned something earlier, like about how when you step on stage, people know you're his girlfriend. I didn't even know you guys were dating, so I was wondering how long you guys have been dating.
We started dating in February.
Oh, okay,
So
okay.
yeah, both of us are really personal with that kind of stuff. So it took us a while to, get comfortable with the social media side of it. But I think now that we're in like a really good place with our relationship, and there are probably a lot of listeners that have seen Adam's post on his Team Elite account about our relationship, and how we've had some ups and downs, and um, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's
But we've
awesome
been
though.
dating since February.
So it's almost
Yeah,
1 year.
I know, it's
Actually,
crazy.
what is your anniversary?
It is the second.
Oh, I was gonna say your episode might come out on it. um, not that that would be like a really exciting part of your anniversary, but it'd
Oh,
be
that would be
ironic.
so funny if it came out on the second. Yes.
But that's pretty cool. And I think like for anyone, any relationship, whether it's coaching client or whatnot, like if you have
Mhm.
a presence online talking about your relationship, sometimes can be scary or tough, or you want to make sure like you guys are really confident in it before you bring like other people in the world into it.
Right, right. And that's what we always wanted to make sure, like, that we keep our relationship personal, because he is very known throughout the industry, and you know just that we keep things like between him and I. And I feel like all relationships should be like that instead of like displaying it on social media. you
Yeah,
know yeah,
exactly. It's not like a marketing tactic. It's
yeah,
actually
exactly.
yes. So now I'm gonna go back to you and some awesome things about you that I learned, and I appreciate you talking about girl talk. So that was fun. But I want to know, you studied sports management, and is this what you got your degree in?
Yes, so I got my degree in sports management, and before that I was actually looking into business marketing. So when I got into fitness, I changed my major to sports management because I knew, and this is how Adam and I connected, I knew I wanted to get into something involving fitness. And what better way to do that than to learn about, how to run your own business and how to be successful, in that sense. So yeah, it felt like the perfect major and I went with it, and it ended up working out really well. And in the future, I think it'd be of use to me. And right now, as like a posing coach and office assistant, I haven't used my degree as much, but that's okay. I know I'll use it at some point, but sports management was really fun to learn about.
That's what my sister studied too. Like she took that route as well. So I think it's awesome, and it's a cool degree too, because like you said, you can use it in lots of different ways. And the fact that you
Hmm.
are working within an industry that you love and that inspired you to get into the degree in itself says a lot. Like it sounds like you actually got into it because of fitness industry, and now you're working in a bodybuilding office. You're working with bodybuilders and competitors and women who want to compete, women who think about it. Like
Hmm.
that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's really awesome. Definitely learning about certain things and the professionalism that goes along with that degree has helped me so much um, with being an office assistant and dealing with, the different things that come with that and having opposing clients. And yeah, it's been a lot of fun. I've learned so much in the past year.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, it's fun like how the hands-on experience like really gets us to learn when we're
Hmm.
like faced with those things. And also how when you're in conversation or when you're coaching someone, something pops up from your degree that you like, oh yeah, I,
Hmm.
I actually knew that, or I had that in my mind and it just like got brought up from this thing. So I think that's amazing. And when you let's say when you finish your degree, now you're working as body, you did say in the future you might use it. Do you have like a big goal or dream of using it in some way, or was that just like maybe I'll use it?
Um, Originally, and this is how like Adam and I connected, like I said earlier, is I wanted to open my own gym and have my own
Oh,
business. So that was the reason why I got my degree in sports management. Um, but maybe somewhere down the road, if I get more involved in the business aspect of Team Elite Physique, that I'd use it more. But as of right now, no big business plans. I love to focus on my clients and um, being at Team Elite Physique. So
that's awesome. And you're feeling fulfilled and you're doing what you love, which I mean, can't beat that.
yeah, it's wonderful.
So I had one more question about getting your pro card. When you were going into NPC Nationals, did you have a feeling it was going to be your show?
I didn't honestly. Isn't the simplest way to put it. Um I didn't feel very confident. My prep was very short, so I felt like I was playing catch up when I started leaning out. I did, I think, a 7 or 8 week prep,
Dang.
and I was in relatively good shape from my last show. I'd taken 3 months off and kind of, done my recomp and stayed put. So going into the show, I knew like I needed a little bit more shoulder, I needed a little bit more upper glute. One big thing for me was more abdominal development. And there were so many girls backstage that had amazing abs and really great shoulders. So I was like, okay, I'll probably, get second or third call outs. That's totally normal for my first national show. Um, and that was kind of my mindset going into it. I was going to do as good as I possibly could, nail my poses, um, do my best in comparisons. But the last thing I thought was getting center stage and placing second in my class, which is insane.
It's so awesome. Your first national show too, and it was a 7 to 8 week prep, and you would put 3 months of work in from your last show, like really building on what the
Hmm.
judges wanted you to. And did the judges tell you you needed more abdominal development, or was that something like you just looked around backstage and was like, hmm?
It was definitely something that I needed. When I did Mile High,
Mm-hmm.
we were fortunate enough to have Sandy judging. She did the pro show that day also. So one of my pieces of feedback from her was to grow more in my abs. So I had worked on that, and it's really hard for me to grow in that area. So I took time and worked on that, and it all came together. So yeah.
So what did you do to work on your ab development? And I'm asking selfishly because it was feedback from my last show, and I've been working, I worked my abs so much this improvement season, so much. I'm still working them. But I'm curious as like what were your go-to movements?
So I have 4 go-to movements. The first one is going to be hanging leg raises.
I do those
Second one,
too.
yes, they're so hard, but
They're
they make
so
it so
hard.
worth it. Cable crunches,
I do those too.
legging crunches. So
Don't
like
do
your
those.
traditional French, and
Okay.
then laying leg raises, and then
Yeah.
whenever you can get to a point where you're strong enough, taking your lower back off of the ground and crunching up a little bit further before extending your legs back down is definitely a killer for laying leg raises, and it really engages your lower abdominals.
So is
So
that
that's
like
definitely a good one.
when you're laying down on your back, you have your legs up, you lower them towards the floor, and then you do something, or is it when your legs are up in the air?
So imagine yourself laying down. When you bring your legs up, instead of doing the traditional leg raise where your hips stay on the ground,
Mm-hmm.
you bring your hips up off the ground.
Oh, okay. Yes, I know what you're talking about. Okay.
Yes. So
The
yeah,
exercises that don't have
yeah,
names, so you have to like make them up as you're doing them, like leg raise
yeah,
with hip
or just
up.
yes.
Okay, got it. Well, thanks for sharing those. Yeah, all of those are awesome movements. I remember watching Adam's video where he like showed how to do a proper incline crunch, or when you're on the like
Hmm.
decline bench and you're crunching upwards, and that was super helpful. I started implementing that every time it was on my plan, and I was like, oh wow, I feel a major difference.
Yeah, it makes a huge difference.
So you were able to accomplish what the judges were looking for. You nailed your poses, you got front and center, you won your pro card, and you said during that process you felt like you were almost playing catch up. So what kind of challenges did you face in that time frame of, okay, I have 8 weeks until my show? Were there any adversities or challenges you had to overcome?
I think the main adversity that I had to overcome was being true to myself, which meant getting cardio done. That was the toughest thing for me because I am not a cardio bunny. I would love to lift weights all day, but cardio is the hardest part of prep for me. If I can procrastinate, I'll procrastinate, and I'm going to be totally honest. But I made it a huge point during that prep to get every single session done. And instead of doing it after my workout, sometimes I do it before my workout
Mm-hmm.
because I felt like I could be more efficient that way. That way, I'm not pushing it off later and later into the day. So that was definitely one of them. And then kind of getting my weight to a point where I was lean enough and focusing less on that and more of what I was seeing in the mirror. As of course, you get to a point in prep where, it's very visual. What you look like is more important than your weight. And of course, if you gain muscle between shows, your weight's not going to be the same when you step on stage again. So getting used to that was definitely an adversity for me.
Were you heavier than you had been in the past then?
I think I was like a pound and a half heavier, but I came in looking completely different from my last show, which was Colorado State. So it was really cool to see the changes that happened.
Definitely. Like it's a rewarding thing, and you were able to focus your attention on, what mattered, and you brought what they were looking for. You got all your cardio done. And how much cardio were you doing when you were like in that, grind time?
I think the most cardio I did it was never more than 45 minutes. And I went between 5 and 6 days a week. And then when peak week came around, I switched to steady state. So,
Yeah, because that
yeah.
that like is less taxing, right?
Hmm. Also helps all the inflammation come down from training hard and doing hit cardio. So,
Definitely. I learned that the hard way. One like peak week, I was running so much, and I didn't do what I needed to do to like reduce the inflammation after the runs. Like I wasn't stretching, I wasn't
hmm.
putting my feet up, I wasn't using any like, those ice squeezing leg thingies. I don't know what they're called. Compression pants. Like all those things probably
Oh
would have
yeah.
helped like to
Hmm.
bring it down because I was running so much, but you live and learn. So
Yes.
um that's it's awesome to hear. Like I think I wanted to ask you that because it's nice to hear that pros and new pros like yourself, pros who are even involved in the industry, still face the struggles that I think a lot of amateurs don't realize they face. I mean, you
Hmm.
technically, you were becoming the pro version of yourself while doing that, but you were an
Hmm.
amateur by way of the definitions of the league. But I've had a lot of girls express to me who listen, like, it's nice to know they're not the only ones who struggle. And
Mhm.
I actually remember, like, the idea of this podcast came, I was like on the treadmill one day really struggling, and I was like, do other pros struggle like this? And so it's nice to hear
Yeah.
that, yeah, you do. Not like, oh, I want you to struggle, but you're not alone.
Yeah, and everyone does struggle. I mean, even the best pros, like, they'll of course get it done, but there's still going to be tough points along the way. I mean, we're all human, so we're all going to experience times like that.
Yes, it's so true. And I appreciate you breathing light into so much of the topics we covered today. I know some of it was really heavy, and also some of it was just, really informative. And I appreciate you sharing so much value. And I'd love for you to share your best advice for girls who have never competed but are thinking about competing, and then your best advice for the girls who are on their road to pro.
So my best advice for girls that have never competed and want to compete, I would say make sure you're in a really good place mentally before you do so. Make sure you're totally comfortable with yourself and make sure you're ready for the challenges ahead. And then, can you remind me what your second question was?
Yeah, advice for girls who are on their road to pro.
Advice for girls that are on their road to pro. Know that you're leveling up is a huge one. Never get complacent with the work that you've put in or how you did at your last show. Always work harder. I never won an overall going into getting my pro card. I placed second and fourth in the 3 shows that I did regionally. So never get complacent and never get down on yourself. There's always room to improve. There's always more to learn. And never forget to be a sponge. And never forget to work really hard. That's so important, is work ethic. So as long as you're true to yourself, you're working really hard, and you're consistent with the action that you're making, I'm positive that you'll get there.
I love that. And by be a sponge, what did you mean?
So when it comes to being a sponge, sorry, Cody's itching. I don't know if you could hear that. Sorry about that.
It's okay.
I would say listen to your coaches. Never think that you like know. Listen to your coaches and make sure that you're doing what they say. If there's like changes to your training or changes to your cardio or changes to your meal plan, they always have your best interest at heart. And they know, like, from past experiences with other competitors, and they know what's best for you, and they want to see you succeed. So make sure you always listen to them.
I love that. That's great advice. Everything you shared is just awesome advice for anyone, in anything, but especially in competing. And I appreciate you taking so much time with me out of your day to share that. I know you guys are super busy, and I know that you have a lot to do, but it means a lot to me that you got on my schedule and we did this episode, and I want everyone to be able to thank you, connect with you, and even inquire about posing with you. So can you let everyone know how they can do those things?
Yes. So you guys can find me on Instagram. So my handle is the Barbell Bombshell, and I have a link in my bio, or feel free to DM me about posing. I'd be happy to talk to you about it and figure out what your needs and goals are. And yeah, that's how you can contact me. IG.
Awesome. Okay, cool. I'll make sure I put that in the show notes page then. So to everyone listening, that's always going to be on celestial.fit/podcast. And if you're looking for Anya's episode specifically and you didn't listen to this like right away when it came out, just scroll to the category section and her name's going to be there. And then you can see all her show notes, all the connection, all of that. It's all going to be there. So with that being said, Anya, thank you so much for coming on.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I've really enjoyed talking with you.
Me too, you. And to everyone listening, thanks for joining us again. It helps when you share this with a friend, and it means so much to me when you guys post about it on your stories, when you post about your page. Like, wow, it's super awesome. And of course, it means so much to the athletes too. So with all that, I hope you all have an amazing rest of your day, night, or morning, wherever you are in the world while you are listening to this episode. Just make it awesome.